Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, in my capacity as Secretary General of BIBA, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar organized by BIBA on the Code of Ethics for Combating Sexual Harassment and Violence Against Women in the Workplace. This Code of Ethics has been drafted by the top 50 most influential women in Egypt Forum in cooperation with the National Council for Women and the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development. Providing women in Egypt with a work environment free from all forms of violence, including harassment, prejudice, and persecution due to gender, is a matter of great importance, not only for the continued development of the Egyptian work environment, but to me personally as a professional woman who's worked in Egypt for over 25 years. The creation and hopefully mass adoption by Egyptian institutions and companies of formal policies against harassment and violence in the workplace, and the provision of training to all employees to protect themselves from abuse, recognize sexual harassment and violence in the workplace, and provide a framework for reporting abuse is a very welcome step in the right direction. I would like to welcome you to our panel of experts for today's discussion. Firstly, Ambassador Moushira Khattab, former Minister of Family and Population of Egypt. Secondly, Lobna Hilal, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt. Then Dina Abdel Fattah, founder and president of the top 50 most influential women forum. And Edward Barney, first Secretary for Social Development at the British Embassy in Cairo. The discussions will be moderated by Hannah El-Hilaly, Executive Advisor to the Chairman of the Egyptian Arab Land Bank. In addition, I'm happy to announce that Sir Geoffrey Adams, the British Ambassador, will join the panel at 1 p.m. to say a few words. Also, I would like to recognize and thank for their continuous support our event partners, Banque du Caire, CIB Egypt, Polaris Parks, and QNB El Ahli. Without further ado, I will leave the floor to the moderator, Hannah El-Hilaly.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm really proud to be moderating a panel of very distinguished guests and speakers and dear friends as well on a very, very important topic, a very strategic topic, which is the harassment of women in the workplace and violence against women. It is important to mention that the godfather, what I call the godfather of this initiative, is Dina Abdel Fattah, and I commend her for this excellent initiative. And you can see from the speakers today that everybody is very excited about the implementation of this excellent initiative and taking it a step forward in implementation. We have very distinguished panelists today. So let me start one by one by the godfather of the initiative, Ms. Dina Abdel Fattah. And Dina, let me ask you this question. How did the idea stem up? How was this initiated? Why was this initiated? Who originated the idea? How did it, take its shape that we are seeing now? And if you can elaborate, give us an overview of the initiative. The plans for implementation will be covered by Ambassador Moushira Khattab. We want to know more about partnerships, the future, the steps forward, and so on and so forth. And Ms. Lobna Hilal will give us the general overview of the code, her thoughts on the way forward to encourage institutions to adopt it. And Ms. Ambassador Moushira Khattab will speak about the measures of implementation of the Code of Ethics. And I think we can also include some monitoring and evaluation and key performance indicators for such an important initiative. So without further ado, Dina Abdel Fattah, how did the idea stem? Give us an idea of how this all started. I know you're very passionate, and this is a very exciting panel, I would say. So we're all excited to hear and know from you, how did this idea come into mind? Dina, the floor is yours. I think you're on mute, Dina. Dina? Dina? Nadia, if someone can ask Dina to unmute her microphone, please.
Yes, this is what we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Because she has signed in with a number of, we'll call her and let you know. Yeah.
Okay. So she didn't hear the good words I said about the initiative. Okay. Dina, please unmute your microphone.
Hannah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Hannah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank Biba for hosting this webinar and extend my gratitude to Nadia Lamnoum. Nadia actually is a prominent member of the top 50 most influential women, and she is playing a great role in empowering the forum. And let me start by the good news of today. As Nadia mentioned yesterday to me, Biba will sign the Code of Ethics, making it the first association of its kind to adopt it. It is my pleasure to have this open discussion today with all of the distinguished participants. And before I start, if you allow me to get into details about the Code of Ethics, to quickly introduce the top 50 most influential women forum. Actually, the forum represents over 24 different sectors and includes 300 women leaders, including ministers, CEOs, executives, and board members. The platform provides unique opportunities for networking and the exchange of experiences with different professional and educational backgrounds. We are also medium private sector women enterprise that builds on local and international experience to provide development services and consultation in the area of women empowerment. Hannah, actually, after several harassment incidents that surfaced recently, the top 50 most influential women forum decided to take action to battle the cause and reform a culture that does not recognize women's autonomy. As you all know, unfortunately in Egypt, there is no clear definition of harassment. To add insult to injury, the general culture of silence and shame refuses to admit that harassment is a problem. This culture widened the gender gap, making it harder for women to excel and perform efficiently, and helped women fall prey to more verbal and physical harassment. We realized that harassment is not limited to name calling or assault on the streets, but also exists in the workplace. We had to start somewhere where we could achieve the desired change. Therefore, the forum launched Inti Qawiya initiative that enables women to be confidently safe and capable to defend themselves against all types of harassment and discrimination, wherever they are. And for the first time, we entered uncharted territories. And yes, we're talking about issues that neither our Egyptian culture nor the majority of institutions or companies were ready to talk about. Our first attempt to bring this initiative to life was through the Code of Ethics, aiming to close all gaps. The Code of Ethics starts by defining harassment in a culture where harassment never had one clear definition. And obviously, it will constantly be under permanent development. The code defines the specific responsibility for all stakeholders in the workplace. Lubna Hilal will talk about the details of the code and its responsibility during her talk, as you mentioned. And now that we have a clear definition of harassment within the workplace and define the roles and responsibilities of all stakeholders, we needed a manual that will clarify, will clearly state what kind of steps needed to be taken to ensure the women are in safe and balanced environments? And what are the KPIs needed to achieve that? And in this matter, Ambassador Moushira will discuss this with us today. Our purpose behind creating the code is to enable women and highlight the importance of giving women an equal opportunity in the workplace, hoping to start a culture revolution against all the things that hold women back. The great news I want to share today is that during a short period of time, actually, we succeeded in getting the National Council for Women and the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development on board. In addition, the Egyptian Financial Regulatory Authority signed a communiqué to implement the Code of Ethics as a mandatory listing requirement for non-banking financial and stock market companies. Our reach expanded outside of Cairo to Buhira, making it the first governorate to actively take steps in making the workplace a safe space for women. My closing remark is that we ask you to be a change maker. We ask you to help create safer environments for Egyptian women by signing the Code of Ethics with us and become a part of the change we are all seeking. And if anyone wants to share experience or exchange views today, considering the development of the code, please don't hesitate to do so. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Gina. This has been very enlightening, and we hope to see more partnership in the very near future. As you mentioned, the Financial Regulatory Authority started. We have the support of the National Council for Women. We have the support of private sector. So I think we will be definitely seeing more in the very near future. I think this is quite a pressure group to see this on the ground. Without further ado, and I congratulate you, Gina, again on the excellent initiative, I'd like to invite our distinguished guest speaker today, Ms. Lubna Hilal, who's the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt and a dear colleague, to tell us more and give us a general overview of the Code of Ethics and her thoughts on the way forward. How can we take this a step forward for implementation and to encourage institutions to adopt it? What do we have actually in mind? Which kind of institutions? What are the steps? We're all looking forward. The floor is yours. Lubna has her mic.
I'm on mute.
Okay.
I'm muted, yes. Well, thank you very much, Hannah, for the introduction. And I would like to express really my pleasure to being part of this webinar and to thank the association and my dear friend Nadia Lamroun for organizing it and giving the forum a chance to present the Code of Ethics to the esteemed members of the association. I don't want to take too much time because I'd like really to have an open discussion, but briefly, the code is a general framework for combating sex harassment and all forms of violence and discrimination against women in the workplace. And I'd like here to underline workplace so that we all do not confuse it with violence, domestic violence, or harassment in public places. Our forum is only known as a forum of technocratic women, so we are always concerned with the workplace, which is a very important part of the day that women spend in their workplace. When we started developing it, we said to ourselves, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. So we really leaned on codes of ethics that were written in other countries or that were adopted by other organizations worldwide. And definitely we tweaked it a little bit so that it fits with the Egyptian local environment and environment of doing business in Egypt. The code is developed against a very strong and elaborate legal framework that is embedded in the constitution, the different various laws and also the penal codes. And they all affirm the right of equality. They affirm that there is no tolerance for discrimination based on sex, color, religion, or ethnicity, etc. And that it also includes clear clauses on definitions of harassment crimes and appropriate escalating punishments that are related to the various kinds of crimes. So against this very elaborate backdrop and illegal backdrop, the code was developed, and you will see in the 2-page that were circulated that there are a lot of cross-references to some of the legal laws that are already in place, so that we don't need to repeat them again, and gives the code a lot of strength of being backed by a legal framework. The code was developed in a way to ensure that institutions adopt policies, raise awareness, set mechanisms and channels, as well as institute and enforce policies to create a work environment with zero tolerance to harassment, discrimination and violence. And I'd like also to underline this, because this is our ultimate goal by enforcing this code. The code provides guidance and key measures to be taken by institutions for when they come to implementation. It puts a clear definition on workplace, and we have extended the definition to go beyond the headquarters and the normal offices of doing business, to expand to out-of-office events like conferences, workshops, or out-of-office events as well, so that the employer is obliged to secure the same kind of anti-violence, anti-harassment procedures, even if we are out of the normal offices of the firm. It also defines harassment. There is, as Dina was mentioning, several paragraphs of several lines that define what is harassment. And again, here we had cross-referencing to the legal and regulatory framework that is already in place. It assigns clear responsibilities to all the stakeholders, the employer, employees, and the regulatory authorities. And definitely the bulk of the responsibilities lies with the employer. And it starts from availing a safe, physically safe work environment, to creating awareness about harassment, violence, and discrimination actions. And that's through training of the staff, through a distribution of material, educational material, so that the staff is aware what is defined as harassment and what actions should not be done. The employer also has the responsibility of developing internal code of ethics regarding this subject with it, and the whole package of policies and procedures that go along that code. And here, let me stress that one of the most important areas that we stressed on in the code is that the employer has to provide a very clear mechanism for reporting, and that the reporting has to be done in confidentiality, and it has to ensure that the reportee is not subject to any kind of retaliatory actions by the institution or by the person that he's reporting against. And also that the company needs at one point in time maybe to support or give some sort of support, psychological support, to anybody that had gone through a very ugly incidents, for example. Also, the employer has to make sure that when reporting an incident, that it is investigated through the proper channels in a very fair way and a very transparent way, to make sure that when there is a disciplinary act that is being enforced, it has the buy-in of everybody, and it is quite fair. And penalties could range from just giving a notice to giving maybe the whole case to a criminal. It can develop into a criminal act punished by law. And then lastly, but most importantly, any employer has to have a proper documentation system. They have to have a proper follow-up evaluation and monitoring system in place so that over time we can revisit our policies and make sure that if need be, they can be modified, expanded, or changed in one sort of way or another. This is very important for the future of implementation. And then we have the employees' responsibilities, which are really very straightforward, adhering to the code, making sure that they report whether the incident happens to them or to a colleague, and encouraging their colleagues to report and support them while they are reporting any incidents. Many of the companies in Egypt are subject to a regulatory supervisory authority, and even some of the companies have a sort of a self-supervisory regulatory body in place. And we said that they have a role also to play to ensure that the code, there is awareness about the code, that maybe like the financial regulatory authorities pushed for that it becomes mandatory while listing or for the non-banking financial institutions, and also that the regulatory authorities make it part of their regulatory review of the institution, that they look at this aspect, look at these policies and see whether they are implemented or not, and maybe also have some disciplinary actions for companies that are not compliant with the code and their internal policies. So these are the stakeholders that are really involved in implementing the code. I would like to so this is the overview, but I would like to say here that I look at this document, and Dina also alluded to this, as a work in progress for two reasons. One reason is that we need to, it is a general framework, guidelines, and we need to develop around it a whole lot of manuals, procedures, policies, action plans. And I'm sure that these are not a one-size-fits-all exercise, because there will be differences between the different industries and the sectors as we apply this code. So it has to be tailor-made. The second reason why I think that this code is a work in progress is that I think that by time, and we've seen it in other things happening, is that by time as the society, the companies, the staff, the regulators accept the idea that it will be a change in mindset, and with implementation, I am very much hopeful that the code will expand and it will start covering areas and topics that were at the beginning did not even include, to take it as one step at a time, as they say, or I may use the phrase that is always used by my dear colleague, Ambassador Moushira, in saying that we have to have a soft landing. So I think that code will expand as we go along. So what's next? And how do I see the way going forward? As I said, we have a track of developing the manuals. We have a track also of raising a public awareness around the topic and the implementation of the code. But if I am talking to the members of the association, I think I will have a little bit of more specific ideas and demands, or requests, I won't say demands, and I hope they will all align to it. I think for those members who have not developed the code yet, I urge them and I encourage them to be in touch with the forum, look at our code, accept it, maybe do some changes to it. We are open for any development that can happen on that, but not to neglect the whole subject. And I think the forum will be quite helpful and ready to help in, for example, preparing a case for senior management or preparing a case for the board to explain why the company would like to adopt this code and start implementing it. For those that have already, and I think maybe a lot of our multinational companies could have one sort of another of this code in their manuals and HR code of ethics in general, I really would love if they can engage with us, look at our code, and we can engage in a fruitful discussions and exchange notes on how we can refine, update, and they can also give us their experiences and in the implementation phase, what did they face, how smooth some of the things, the items, the policies were implemented, and what hurdles did they have to face. Finally, I would really like to conclude my intervention by maybe putting on the table a new idea. And that is, how can we cooperate together to make this code, to propagate the code, the code itself to other entities on a wide scale, and I would say push for its implementation and adoption. And I will explain what I mean by push. Before I start this, I would just like to cross-reference to two examples that we have seen in the last decade or two. I'm sure that a lot of you are aware of the environmental, social, and corporate governance standards and guidelines that are now becoming, that are an integral part of any due diligence process that a lender, especially the multilateral lenders, or the big investment funds will have in their due diligence list when they are availing any kind of funding, whether it is debt or equity. And we've seen 15 years ago, this was nothing heard of, but we now know that in many of the companies now that are seeking funding from these institutions, multilateral and investment funds, they have to comply to a certain list of environmental, corporate governance, and social practices in their firms to be eligible for these kind of funding. And it has made a big difference. We've seen companies revamp their policies, the way they approach their businesses to be in compliance of this. And it was really positive for everybody. It was positive for the businesses because they now are being run in a more corporate, with a more corporate governance framework. And they have done so much good in terms of environmental and social impact policies. The economy has benefited. The sectors have benefited from that. I'm not talking about Egypt in general. I'm talking about the whole world, including definitely, most probably, prominently in the developing countries. Another example that comes to mind also is what we have seen now in lately, past years, in how large corporates are scrutinizing their supply chain to make sure that their suppliers are not engaged in any abusive practices. And what comes to mind here is also, it was always child labor. And we've seen the impact that this had over the supply chain and the image of the suppliers and the image of the companies that used to source their goods from different suppliers across the world. And I hope that some of you are guessing where I'm alluding to. What I'm thinking of is that many of the companies present now and others that we are going to approach, we all have a very extensive network of suppliers. And we need to think and elaborate and discuss how can we leverage this relationship for a good cause, like we've seen with the ESGs, like we've seen with abusive practices, so that maybe one day, soon, I hope soon and not later, that we can see that in our pre-qualifications checklist for suppliers, we will have a line item that says adherence to effective policies and measures combating sexual harassment, discrimination, and violence against women. I know it's a very delicate subject, and we have to tread there very carefully. But I feel that the impact will be huge because we will be reaching out to a segment of business, of suppliers, people that do business, that might not be of the size or they have the financial resources to really adopt and implement policies like that. But with some hand-holding, tutoring, I think we can have a very big impact in getting those people in line. And I said it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. It has to be tailored according to the businesses, the size of the suppliers. But I believe that on the medium and long term, it will have the same impact that we've seen in other areas and could be a very good way for the large corporates to help in propagating this code and having it implemented. And it's going to be a win-win situation for everybody concerned. I'd like to leave you with this thought, and I hope that whether through in the webinar or offline later, that we can have a chance to discuss it further to see whether it can be done, something that is worth work on gradually and having it on our to-do lists. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Lubna. This is quite enlightening. You have given us a very comprehensive overview on the general overview of the Code of Ethics, the way forward, and how to encourage institutions in partnership. But I'm going to give you a few questions to reflect on for the questions and answers session. How are you going to work on the manuals? Who will be part and parcel of this? How are you going to establish awareness within the community? Also, you and I come from the banking community and the banking sector. This is a broad spectrum for the implementation of the Code of Ethics. What are we doing about it? Also the private sector, the NGOs, the multinationals, and so on and so forth. So I think we all need to join hands to implement on the rather broader spectrum to implement the Code of Ethics. But thank you very much. This is excellent. We had an excellent overview of the code, and we thank you and Dina for the excellent work that has been done so far. And of course, we have seen the regulator, the Financial Regulatory Authority to start with, has done an excellent job in including women on board and the like. Without further ado, I would like to invite my dear friend, Ambassador Moushira Khattab. Of course, she is the former Minister of Family and Population in Egypt, and quite an expert in the field. And we are very excited to hear from you, Ambassador Moushira, on the measures of implementation of the Code of Ethics. This is quite a tedious exercise, so we'd like to know from you, how would this be implemented? And I think you have a presentation for us.
Yes,
yes.
I will share the presentation, and I want to thank you very much. I'm really honored and proud to be with this group of distinguished women leaders, and I will give you my presentation. I will soon share the screen, but I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to hear the last segment of Dr. Lubna Hilal presentation, when she spoke about child labor and due diligence and the ethics and tutoring or hand-holding. Actually, it's not a sensitive issue anymore, because I've conquered this in 2008, and we've criminalized the privation of children from education. We've criminalized child labor. We've put basic standards and minimum age for involvement in the labor market, for children to be involved in the labor market. We have a good legislation. I want to refer you to Law 126 issued at 2008. And really, I'm very happy that we pick up this, because it is costing the economy enormous money and draining of human resources. It is the trigger behind the demographic explosion, behind the deteriorating quality of the population, because if you study deeply, you will find that the poorer segments of the society are those with big families. They tend to have more children. Why? Because the children are perceived and are exploited as breadwinners. So I will take you up on this, Lubna, and we have to continue the road to make sure that the law is implemented. And please remember to jot this down in our Code of Ethics. And I want to really thank Dina Abdel Fattah for the initiative to do this. And I'm very, very proud of the participatory process that we've been following to formulate this Code of Ethics, and the several meetings that we've had, the exchange of views. It's really, it's gratifying to see this. I chose to focus on measures of implementation because I think, and now allow me to share my screen and tell me if you see my screen. No, wait a minute. Here. Do you see my screen? Hello? What happened?
I don't think we see it, Ambassador Moushira.
And I don't see it too.
All
No,
right.
we can't see it, no.
No?
Well, you can tell us what's in it with
No,
listen.
I worked so hard on this presentation. You must see it.
Okay. I like your perseverance, Ambassador Moushira.
You see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Very good.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Okay. So I will talk about the measures of implementing this code of ethics. The code of ethics is a cause for celebration, but more importantly, like Lubna said, we urgently need to implement it in a systematic manner. Harassment and gender-based violence reflect a compromised status of women in the society, and it is a violation of and an impediment to the enjoyment by women of their human rights. What are the set of measurements that the set of measures that we need to take to implement this? We have to start by adopting a holistic, comprehensive, rights-based approach for addressing harassment and gender-based violence, because it stretches to shed obstacles on all human rights of women. The second step is to adopt laws, and not to stop at adopting the laws, but to make sure that the laws are implemented. Like we were talking now about child labor, we have a law, but simply some stakeholders choose to close their eyes, and not only to enforce the law, but to make the enforcement visible, because visibility will be a deterrence for any future perpetrators. Data collection and monitoring. We will not be able to make policies and to judge how we move unless we have data that is disaggregated to reveal gaps, who are the vulnerable groups. And it will also allow us with the monitoring. And I'm glad Hannah mentioned the monitoring and evaluation, because this is a very important component of the implementation measures. Prevention of gender-based violence and harassment is key. We have to make deterrence to stop the vicious circle of harassment. How? We must establish or nurture rights-based social and cultural norms. This takes time, but the media, religious leaders, people, influencers inside the business can help with this. Capacity building for so many stakeholders. We start by professionals dealing with women, those implementing the laws, those receiving complaints, those in charge of rehabilitation or whatever. We need to build their capacity on what harassment means, why gender-based violence costs the economy and costs men a lot. Building the capacity of women is the beginning, because if women are self-confident, if women know how to deal with harassment, this is the best deterrence that stops any potential perpetrators. And I am encouraged by what Lubna, and I say Lubna and you have to say Moushira, otherwise I'll sue you if you say ambassador or something like this. Women and girls. We cannot speak about women without girls. And if I may remember our discussion at the hotel when we first met, and we said, no, we're talking about female technocrats. We're not going to be bothered with girls. You will not empower any woman unless you empower her as a child. An oppressed child will never be an empowered woman. Economic, social, and cultural empowerment of women and girls. And believe me, it comes as a package. Cultural rights are essential for economic empowerment. Political participation is essential for economic empowerment. So it's a package. That's why we have to have a comprehensive approach. A very important point about nurturing a culture of equality and respect for women is to include in the educational curriculum information on human rights, including those of women and children, gender equality and self-awareness, and contribute to eliminating gender stereotypes and fostering an environment of non-discrimination. Discrimination is a plague, and we suffer from discrimination consciously or unconsciously. Public awareness, again, is crucial because there are no limits between the workplace, the home, and other places or other settings that women frequent. So public awareness campaign on women's rights and gender-based violence is important. And here we look at the educational system, at the religious institutions, at the media, everywhere. The informal sector is crucial because most of the discrimination starts away from the law, away from the system. Protective measures and responsive services and visible law enforcement, unless the victims or potential victims see that the law is enforced, that there is easy access to justice, that those who resort to the justice system get their rights and are compensated and rehabilitated. I think I spoke about this easy access to justice and rehabilitation of victims. Usually you can get access to justice, but rehabilitation of victims lags behind. It costs more and it needs more talent and more skills that are usually absent. And the last thing is a solid victims and witnesses protection program. If I am harassed at my workplace and I report, and I know that I will be reprimanded by those that I reported, I will never report any abuse or harassment. So we must have a solid, transparent victims and witnesses protection program. And I'm glad that the government has adopted a law to protect the identity of victims of rape and abuse. So we have a promising legal system in this respect, but we need to put more details in this. Lastly, building partnerships, including with government. Of course, government is the biggest employer of women. And we've seen that some ministries have a law, sort of a code of ethics, but how it's implemented, I don't know. And I'm happy that BIPA is with us because they can help us to see if we have a law, how is the law implemented? Because to have a law is something, and its implementation on the ground is a different story. It is colored by the customs and social norms. So building partnerships with the civil society organizations and the private sector is very important. And the independent monitoring and evaluation programs And developing KPIs, which we touched on at the beginning, is very important, because without this, we will never know whether this code of ethics is working well on the ground or it's just a piece of paper. And I thank you very much for your attention. Women's rights are human rights, no going back. The only way is forward, because women are strong. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Moushira, or sorry, Moushira.
Moushira,
yes.
I love my name.
Yeah, it's a beautiful name. And it's a beautiful presentation, very comprehensive, very enlightening. Maybe I would like to also draw your attention to the role of senior level in organizations, be it men or women, in preventing harassment. And I see a comment from our dear colleague Mirai Nissim, who is into education in schools, and she strongly recommends that and appreciates you mentioning the role of girls, and it all starts in schools, actually. So I think this is a very good start for spreading this awareness from the very beginning. Now I'd like to present our next speaker, Mr. Edward Barney, who is the first Secretary for Social Development at the British Embassy in Cairo. And he's the only gentleman on the panel today, so we're all looking forward to hearing from you, Sir Edward. You need to unmute, yes.
Thank you very much, Anna. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Brilliant. I want to start by saying it's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here, and especially inspiring to follow such a distinguished group of speakers. I do feel slightly like an imposter, but I would also like to start by thanking BIBA, the Forum of the Top 50 Most Influential Women, the National Council of Women, and the Ministry of Planning for all the work that's gone into today's topical discussion. Let me also separately congratulate those specifically involved in the development of this code of ethics, which is a very, very welcome step forward. I want to say that this issue is a major priority for both the government of Egypt, Egyptian civil society, and the British Embassy in Cairo. First and foremost, at the Embassy in Cairo, we see this as a moral imperative to eliminate all forms of harassment at work. Nobody should have to live through the experience of not feeling safe in their own workplace. In my view, a zero tolerance approach is the only approach. But we recognize, separately from this being a moral problem, it's also the right thing to do from a business perspective. Preventing violence against women and girls and supporting women's economic empowerment, particularly private sector participation, are major themes across the UK's work in Egypt on development, diplomacy, and trade. In fact, UK-funded research with the World Bank has estimated that if female employment rates were to match male employment rates in Egypt, this could increase GDP by up to 34%. However, we know there are many barriers that stand in the way of this figure, but harassment is one of those key barriers to achieving higher labour market participation for women. Indeed, in 2015, I know that the Egypt Economic Cost of Gender-Based Violence Survey calculated the cost at more than 2 billion Egyptian pounds every year, highlighting that more than 8 million women experience violence in the workplace yearly. Sadly, this issue affects women in the UK too. The data we have indicates that more than half of women in the UK have experienced sexual harassment whilst at work. For women aged 16 to 24, this percentage rose to 63%, with almost 20% of women reporting that the person harassing them was their manager or someone in a position of authority. Clearly, when this happens to a 16 to 24-year-old at the early stage of their career, there's a risk that this can lead to women permanently leaving the workplace for the rest of their lives when they've only just begun that journey. But progress, and there is hope for progress, requires innovative initiatives that work directly with the private sector, just like this code of ethics, which is being launched today, to ensure that tangible actions are taken on the ground. In addition to this fantastic code, I wanted to highlight two complementary initiatives that the UK has been working on in Egypt directly. Firstly, you may be aware that earlier in the month, we partnered with the World Bank and the National Council of Women, who own this initiative, to launch or relaunch the Gender Equity Seal, which awards private sector companies for contributing to high standards of gender equality at work. Under the leadership of Her Excellency Dr. Maya Morsi, the president of NCW, there are big ambitions to take this initiative to scale across the private sector in Egypt. We're very proud that Vodafone, a company that was headquartered in the UK, was one of the first businesses to be awarded with this seal. And I know that British companies operating in Egypt are very keen to make a contribution to this vital agenda. The World Bank team, who have worked with the National Council of Women with support from the UK to develop this gender equity model, which has been successfully implemented in various countries, aims to promote gender equity in the workplace and eliminate gender discrimination and practices hindering women across different companies. It focuses holistically on 4 areas with those companies, including recruitment, career development, family work-life balance, and sexual harassment policies. So the Code of Ethics, with its focus on sexual harassment, is very much contributing to the same agenda. And I look forward to seeing both initiatives become widely adopted across the private sector in Egypt. Secondly, I wanted to highlight that over the past 5 years, the UK has invested more than £11 million in a programme called the Arab Women's Enterprise Fund, which has worked across Jordan and Egypt directly with large firms in the finance, garments and agriculture sector to transform those companies' approaches to female participation in their workforce. So in Egypt, we've worked with large companies such as Deltex Holdings and Arafa Holdings. And what AWEF has been doing, the Arab Women's Enterprise Fund, is work with them on a consultancy basis to change the way they operate, to change their supervision standards, their recruitment practices, their reporting of incidents. And I think the key thing here that we've seen is not only have they increased female participation in those companies, but ultimately they've increased productivity, they've reduced worker absenteeism, and they've seen increases in their profitability. So as I said at the beginning, not only is this a moral issue, but it's the right thing to do from a business perspective. So I won't say any more. As I said, I'm very, very grateful for your time today. And I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this Code of Ethics. And certainly the British Embassy stands ready to champion this agenda in any way that we can.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ed Barney, and thank you for a very comprehensive presentation of what the British Embassy is doing to further foster gender equality. And I have witnessed actually the Gender Seal session with Ms. Dr. Maya Morsi and with the participants, Vodafone and CIB, and I congratulate you on that. I'm really stunned to know that 50% of women in Britain, in the UK, experience harassment. So, I mean, what do you do about it? What penalties are levied, and how could this be prevented? What are your efforts in doing this? And speaking of the Gender Seal, do you think we can also see support from the British Embassy to have a seal, an anti-harassment, anti-violence seal? Maybe Dina Abdel Fattah would be thrilled to have such a support from the embassy. So maybe you can share your insights and inputs on that. Thank you.
Of course.
I know you have eyes and ears for all such support. So maybe I took advantage of on being the moderator today to suggest this,
and
we
by
all
the
have
way,
to partner together.
But by the way, you're one of the most of the top 50 most influential women who have to advocate our call.
Of course, we all advocate for women empowerment and fighting this harassment thing. Okay, can you give us your insights, please?
Would you like me to come back now, Hannah?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, fantastic. I think on the penalties question that you asked first, sometimes we place too much emphasis on the law, which in the UK is strong, and there is lots of capacity in the judicial sector to enforce cases of sexual harassment. And certainly within companies, they are required by the law to monitor cases and report cases. But I think lots of this comes down to social attitudes, social stigma, the confidence and the culture. And, as the speakers have already mentioned, that starts with the education system. Women and girls have to feel confident enough to be able to challenge perceptions. And sexual harassment doesn't start immediately. It starts with micro behaviors. And I think certainly what I've observed in the UK in a working environment is that more people now feel comfortable to call out those micro behaviors before something can become a substantial problem. But that requires that education and confidence before it gets to that point to stamp out that behavior. I think the sectoral variance in the UK is still quite large. Some sectors, such as finance, are still heavily dominated by male representation and the law profession. In those areas, it becomes harder when you don't have female allies in the workplace to talk to. You don't know how to sense check behavior and call problems out at an early stage. So if you've personally experienced this behavior, sometimes you think internally that maybe you have the problem, when in fact that's not the case at all, that the behavior has been totally unacceptable. So actually one thing we've done here in the embassy in Cairo is that we have 4 anti-harassment champions, and they serve to talk to anyone and provide a listening ear to anyone who feels that they've experienced unacceptable behavior. And I think that can really help to provide the confidence to then take things a step further if unfortunately that's needed, to go down a legal avenue. But I want to think much more broadly than just the law. I think certainly on the gender still, I'd be very, very happy to collaborate after this session today. In my view, the more schemes like this, the better. These are not competitive. The gender equity seal we have does not replace this code of ethics. They contribute very much to the same agenda, and the more we can communicate and stay in touch, the better.
Thank you for that. So, I believe we are waiting for the Honorable Sir Geoffrey Adams to join. But in the meantime, if any of the panelists would like to address additional points.
Yes, Hannah, can I address one point, please?
Please go ahead.
I will tackle the point you just mentioned about the marketing plan for the Code of Ethics. Actually, we have a promising marketing plan and a public relations plan that will spread the word through different methods of content related to the implementation of the Code of Ethics. And our plan includes having different conferences, roundtables with different sectors to spread awareness like we're doing right now. And having well-developed content going on social media and other media tools like newspaper, online website, radio and TV. In addition to that, actually, we are thinking of choosing a gender champion to be ambassadors for the cause from different backgrounds to make sure we are reaching out to all segments of the people. Also, our new product we're working on right now is an initiative to step up ideas for coming generations through Egypt Talk. It will be a series of episodes highlighting the success stories of women who made it to top-notch position despite all the challenges, including the sexual harassment, of course, as one of the main challenges we are facing since we start our career path.
Thank you, Dina. This sounds great. And I will interrupt here to welcome the Honorable Sir Geoffrey Adams, the UK Ambassador to Egypt. And Dina, also you wanted to welcome him to the panel today. And we look forward to your insights, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be joining you. Does someone want to come in first before I say my few words?
Dina?
Yes, Sir Geoffrey, actually, we want to thank you actually of being with us today and support the initiative, and we would like to have the cooperation, a near future cooperation with the British Embassy to make our dreams true in the near future.
We thank you, sir, for the excellent support we have from the British Embassy and for hosting this panel. We thank Biba, we thank Nadia Lamloum, Ms. Tara Henton, and for availing, and of course Ed Barney, for availing this excellent opportunity for our distinguished guest speakers to present their views on the way forward, on the overview of the Code of Ethics and so on and so forth. So thank you for that.
No, well, not at all. And let me just say thank you so much for those nice words of welcome. And I must say, when I heard that BIBA were organizing this event, I was so pleased and excited, if I may say proud, because BIBA is an organization that is close to our hearts in the embassy. And I was so delighted that BIBA was joining the many, many institutions and organizations and companies that are taking these issues seriously, frankly. Because we think they are really serious and have a number of aspects to them. I mean, the big picture, as far as we see it, is that gender issues generally are front and center in the development work that the British government does around the world. And I think, have you already heard from my colleague, Ed Barney? I hope he's given you a little bit of count, or maybe he will later in the day, account of some of the projects we're involved in, which are designed to address some of the gender issues that exist here in Egypt, but also we do similar things around the world. And I don't need to rehearse for this audience, you know very well what the justification for that is, what the rationale for that, because we believe that there's not just a moral imperative, there's an economic imperative, is that companies that treat women properly are more successful companies.
Absolutely.
Companies that have women running them tend to be more successful. Companies that value diversity are more successful companies. And societies and countries where women do well tend to be more successful societies and countries. And I think that there's ample evidence to confirm that. And that's why gender issues are important everywhere in the world. That's the sort of big picture. But the other reason I'm really so pleased you're doing this is because these issues are actually quite personal to me as a manager and as a leader of a small team in the embassy. And that's because I think and all of you know the UK very well, these issues now have become really important in our national debate and our national dialogue. And for some years now, we have been trying as an employer in the Foreign Service that I work for in our different embassies around the world to make sure that we have in place structures and processes to make sure that women feel safe in the workplace, but also feel safe traveling to and from the workplace as part of our overall ambition to make our embassies and our ministries excellent places for women to work, as I say, in our own interest, as well as in the interests of women. And these issues have recently, as many of you will know, come into sharp focus in the UK because there was a terrible case a couple of weeks ago where a woman called Sarah Everard was abducted and apparently murdered while walking in South London, in a part of London that many of you will know very well. And this tragic and horrifying incident caused a huge reaction in the UK, as many of you will know, with demonstrations and calls for actions to be taken by the authorities to make the streets safer for women and to make workplaces safer for women. So this is a really big issue for us now. And any British organization, like any British embassy, even more than ever now, is under instructions and has the ambition to make their workplace a safer and a better place for women to work, by which I mean to work without fear of violence or harassment of any kind. So I think it's all great. I think the code of ethics that I've seen that you're talking about is absolutely excellent. And I'm so pleased that BIBA has assembled such a distinguished, I see several colleagues and friends on the line, such a distinguished panel of people with experience in this area, to exchange views and to work about how we can take this forward, this agenda in Egypt. But as I say, this is not just an Egyptian agenda, this is an agenda which is very relevant in the UK as well. And so I really just wanted to add my voice of support and admiration for what you're doing, and to pick up what was just said. If there's anything we in the embassy can do to support you and to work with you on this important agenda, then we are more than ready to do that. So thanks, lovely to see you all on the screen, and thank you very much. And I apologize if I've interrupted the flow of your meeting. I've just come from another one. But thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say those few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much for honoring us with your insights and what the British Embassy can do to support and share maybe best practices of what's happening in the UK and whether it could be replicated in Egypt for the best benefit of Egyptian women. We also took the advantage, or I also took the advantage of being the moderator to suggest a seal for anti-harassment, anti-violence against women. Maybe the embassy could support this initiative as part and parcel of the Top 50 Women Forum. And we thank BIBA, we thank the British Embassy, we thank Sarah, we thank Ed, we thank all participants today for the excellent inputs and insights and the wonderful presentations. We really wanted to take this a step further and implement what we had started and what Dina, Abdel Fattah, and the excellent panelists on board today to see this happening in reality. We now open the floor for questions, and I just see a comment here. I don't know whether Mr. Ambassador has the time to stay with us for the comments and the questions.
Yes, sure. I've got another meeting at 5:30, so I've got 20 minutes.
Okay, great. We'll be honored to have you then. Actually, it's a comment from Methat Stefanos. He says it's actually a comment. I would suggest to engage some influential men candidates who really believe in such an initiative from different business and social communities as ambassadors for the distinguished initiative, which I really value. I will be proud if you accept me as a mentor for this initiative. So we now see men's participation and interest. That's an achievement, in fact.
That's right.
Yes, Mabruk. I will be proud if you accept me as a mentor, as well as within the Coptic churches. And I think this is a very good idea. Why not? I mean, we need all participants from the society and the community to be involved. We need men's participation and endorsement to take this a step further. I also have a comment from Mr. Hassan El-Miligi. He says it should also include harassment on the internet and social media. Absolutely. I mean, social media plays a very important role in disseminating information and lobbying with all parts of the society. Video meetings, tools, etc., as it plays a very important part. So actually, those are both comments, not questions, but I'll be happy to have our distinguished panelists share their views.
For Mr. Medhat, can I speak now?
Yes,
For
please.
Mr. Medhat, definitely, we would love to have him among our gender champion. Of course, we have now Dr. Mohammed Omran and the chairman of EFSA, and we have Mr. Hisham Amna, the governor of Bahira Governorates, the first governorates which adopt the code of ethics, and it is one of the biggest governorate, as you know, and it is a headquarter of the Muslim Brotherhood, by the way. And we are succeeded there to do lots of efforts on ground. Yes, definitely would be very happy to have a more gender champion.
Perfect. And this proves the success of the initiative if men are interested, definitely. Ambassador Moushira, you have a word?
Yes, please. I would like to, first of all, welcome His Excellency, the Ambassador, and thank you for your words. And I would like to respond to what Mr. Ed Barney mentioned about senior female women in the workplace. And I think this is a very important point because senior female leaders can mentor emerging leaders, and Top 50 has a program of mentorship, and we've gone to the governorates, and I think it works beautifully with this code of ethics to have a capacity building program for emerging leaders as well as senior female managements in the workplace. It is very, very important to focus on what he said, the micro behavior, this to deter any serious action, and actually that everyone will know that we are vigilant, we see everyone, and we can bring the perpetrators to justice. So I think this is very important. And also the idea of having ambassadors, especially male ambassadors, that will be very good, because sometimes senior female leaders cannot talk to male perpetrators. So male leaders can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Moushira. I also have a comment from our colleague Mirai Nissim from Takatuf NGO. And she says, yes, very important to have men's participation and endorsement, and men's and boys raising awareness on the topic. So I see that the men's participation is of utmost importance, as we see from the comments we're receiving. I will now go to Dr. Lubna Hilal. Coming from the banking sector, I think and suggest that we advocate for having banks on board in this very important initiative, to have a broader spectrum of the implementation of the code of ethics. So maybe we have a long exercise to carry, and I think it will be, we'll have a very, very strong outcome in this regard. So if you agree with me, or if you'd like to address your insights on that, or on any other issues.
Sure. No, I think I totally agree with you. The banking sector community is a large employer. We have around 35 to 40% of employees across the whole sector that are female. So it is quite important. We do have some champions within the banking sector. I can also see from the list today of attendees, we have a couple of banks, and actually the webinar was sponsored by a number of banks. So definitely we have to reach out to them on an individual basis and to get them aligned with us. Generally, I think when you asked how will you work on the manuals, I think this is as I said, this is a very challenging assignment, because it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all product. It has to be tailored according to different industries. And that's why I think if we can collaborate with companies that already have their own try to use this material to have a more comprehensive document presented to the likes in the same industry or similar industry, that would be very helpful. It needs a lot of human resources to work on that. So definitely the forum will be reaching out to several entities where they can, for example, sponsor the development of manuals or help us in putting them together. Meal championship definitely is something that is very, very welcomed. And I've seen in other institutions that I've been involved in, for example, the Alliance for Financial Inclusion. I was the deputy chairman of the gender committee, and we had male champions. And actually we gave out a gender advocacy certificate to some of our male members, calling them gender ambassadors for the Alliance. So if we can also develop this and decide what are the roles and responsibilities of a gender ambassador, be it male or female, that would be very helpful. And it will give a lot of credibility to the cause that we're fighting, because it's also coming from the opposite sex, not just promoted by women. So I endorse this idea very much, and I hope we can have something on the ground soon with the help of Dina.
We all agree to that for sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Lubna. I have another comment from Hussam, who is as BIBA and EBCC. He admires the cause and the collaboration, and he says, finally, someone is taking this to a broader level. The thing is, this has to start from a very young age, as we all agree. Please consider schools. We mentioned that for sure. This should be a part. This should be a major part of subject since a very young age. I live in the UK, so if there's something or anything I can help with, please let me know, or just get in touch with me in order to work with you all great ladies. Dr. Hussam Al-Adwar. So more men on the go, supporting the initiative. And I would also like to link this, how do we link this to Sustainable Development Goals? Because women empowerment, economic empowerment of women, gender equality, and so on and so forth is part and parcel, as well as education. So I think it's all co-linked, and we can definitely work on this together to achieve a good part of the pillars of the SDGs. Sarah, would you like to add? Ed, would you like to add? Dina? I'd like to have a final word from all of you as a main takeaway from this very interesting and dynamic panel to take this initiative a step forward.
Well, I would like to, if I can just have a quick word, I'd like to thank you very much, all of you, for having participated today. It's an incredibly important initiative, and it's one that I really hope is going to expand and grow, and perhaps also move on to in the future, not just, sexual harassment and violence, but the other things that flow from that in the workplace, discrimination in terms of pay equality, discrimination in terms of advancement, because part of the problem in Egypt is banking's an exception, obviously, but in many, many areas of the Egyptian workplace, you do not find women at the top levels. And, you struggle amongst my clients who have listed entities or they want to set up funds. They really struggle to find women to go on the boards. They have to have a woman, but they can't find one. They don't seem to be able to find the kind of women in the market with the experience. But actually, it should be the case that in all of companies, there should be some kind of informal sign up for companies to be signing up to say, actually, we promote female equality and we commit to try and have females, have equal opportunities of advancement, transparency as to pay, etc., just like you have in Britain nowadays. And this will all help with the environment and addressing the issues that are currently contributing to, the sexual harassment and violence that unfortunately is still very endemic in Egypt. I mean, I've seen it, it was quite a shock, obviously, when I moved to Egypt over 25 years ago, what I encountered in Egypt in the workplace. And it has got better, but it's still very much the case that you are very much identified as being a woman, being different. And often still, I'll be one of the very few women around the table. And I really hope that, you know, that will change for our daughters and our granddaughters.
Thank you very much for that. And I didn't know you've been here for 25 years in Egypt, so you're more Egyptian than Egyptians now. So thank you for that, and thank you for appreciating the initiative. We certainly need.
Not at all. And anything I can do to support and help, I'll be very happy.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hannah, thank you, Hannah, actually, for the great moderating of this webinar. And I want also to thank Sir Geoffrey Adams. Sir Geoffrey Adams' support for women is seen every day, not just in the workplace, but also on his Twitter account, where he is always quick to highlight the hard work and dedication of women, and we are honored to have him today with us. Actually, I would like to thank Biba, of course, for hosting us today and giving us the opportunity to advocate our code of ethics. And I would like to tell you that we are now working on a desk study to develop the manual for our code of ethics, and we are currently researching all available manuals that tackle this issue to come up with the best possible result. And we have also hired a curriculum developer to develop the manual with us. If any of the BIBA distinguished member would like or have interest in working with us, sponsoring us in helping and creating this, or Sir Barney, we can discuss later on with him this issue as well. It will be great. And again, thanks to Nadia Lamloum, our prominent member of top 50 most influential women, for giving us this opportunity to engage and have the opportunity to present our code of ethics today.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you very much for the forum, actually, of the top 50 most influential women, for putting us all together. I mean, I always use the slogan, "Together we're strong," and we are definitely strong in implementing this very strategic and important initiative, and jump-started in the proper manner that we'd like to see. The manuals, the way forward, the monitoring and evaluation. And I think Ambassador Moushira Khattab can give us a final word, Lubna Hilal can give us a final word, but let me also thank Nadia Lamloum, Sarah Hinton, Sir Geoffrey Adams, and Barney for hosting this very interesting event. It's a food for thought, what we call food for thought, and we look forward to more initiatives and to more discussions in this regard. Ambassador Moushira and Dr. Lubna, and Ed, if you'd like to add.
Thank you for moderating, really. You've been a great moderator and a great defender of
I just follow the best, Ambassador Moushira.
Thank you very much. And we're really appreciative of the statement of Sir Geoffrey Adams, His Excellency the Ambassador, and we were briefed about the great work that the British Embassy in Egypt is doing to empower women. Nadia Lamloum, we cannot thank you enough, really.
No, I mean,
you're doing great work everywhere.
She's always great.
Yes, I just want to flag a sentence that I hear, and it hurts me so much. We don't have women to put on the boards. We don't have qualified women to use here or there. This is a myth, because we have so many qualified women. And that's why we need the data. We need to have our reservoir to have the list available whenever. And maybe the idea of ambassadors, male ambassadors, will really help us a lot, because we do have qualified women more than we need, actually. And if you look here in Egypt, you will find women with PhDs, women enrolled in special areas. In many cases, they're more than than men. But somehow we disseminate this idea that we don't have enough women. Maybe the data collection should enlarge and reach out to have the list of qualified women. The last point I want to talk about is women in the private sector. Our private sector in Egypt is not competitive because it does not attract women. We need to revisit legislation. Maybe one reason why the private sector is not enthusiastic about hiring women is that our laws puts the burden of hiring women for maternity leave, childcare leave on the employer. Maybe if women can push, and now we have a president who is very much pro-women, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Our next move in this top 50 should be to reform the law to put the responsibility of helping women be competitive in the private sector on the government, insofar as maternity leave and child care leave and capacity building and all of this, we can start a movement. And also, there is not much difference between public sphere and private sphere, and the right of women to draw the balance between her private responsibilities or familiar responsibilities and responsibilities at work is also part and parcel of human rights. I want to thank you very much for making me part of this, and I look forward to the mission that we have in making the manuals and the KPIs and continue our journey. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Hana. Thank you, Nadia Lamloum. Thank you, Lubna Hilal. Thank you, everybody. Sarah, Edward, Your Excellency, Ambassador Geoffrey.
Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Moushira. Maybe you're calling for paternity within the Egyptian law, so maybe we see this in the near future, who knows? Okay, Dr. Lubna Hilal, one final word as a takeaway. Thank you.
Sure, I just want again to start by thanking Nadia, thanking the association, Sarah, for organizing this and giving us the chance. And I'm really very honored and have a lot of pleasure in being part of this panel that has been perfectly moderated by you, Hana, as always. So
I'm humbled. I'm really humbled.
No, it is a key factor of success to have a good moderator on the panel, and definitely I'm very honored and thrilled with the words of Sir Geoffrey Adams and also what was conveyed by Mr. Edwards in terms of what the embassy is doing, and it always feels good that you feel that you're not alone and that maybe other countries also have similar problems and they are working on it. So this is also an opportunity for us all to work together. It is a very multi-pronged topic. It has so many side issues that need to be all addressed in one manner so that we can get to the best results. So cooperation, be it male, female, is very warranted. Cooperation between different also organizations, private sector, public, the civil society, forums like ourselves that are only a combination of different talents put together is instrumental in our way forward. And I really, really look forward over the coming few months that we can have practical results on the ground. I am always of the school that if you focus, have maybe one pilot project, show people what difference it can make, the rollout becomes easier after that. So thank you again, and looking forward to our continuous discussion and collaborations going forward.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lubna, for your insights and for very comprehensive thoughts on that. Last but not least, Ed, would you like to add a word as a main takeaway? Thank you. And then Nadia will finalize with the final word from you as well.
Thank you very much. And as I said, it's a real privilege to be on the panel today. I will promise to continue this conversation and explore the links with the work we've been doing on the Arab Women's Enterprise Fund and with the World Bank and the National Council of Women. I think there's real potential here, and I really look forward to continuing to be part of this agenda. But let me hand over and see if my ambassador has any final words to say, who is a real champion, as we've seen on this agenda.
That's very nice of you, Ed, but I think you sounds like you covered it, and I hope that I was clear earlier in my personal commitment to this. And as I said, I think advertising the great work that Biba is doing in this area is something we will certainly do as well. So thank you so much. I think we were going to go to Nadia for the final word.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sir Geoffrey, for joining us today. Definitely having you on board has played a major part in the success of this forum and discussion. Thank you, ladies, for a very informative session. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, participants, for your insight and then for your support. I would like to say that please use Biba for anything you would like to promote, especially when it comes to harassment and women on board. I mean, we're delighted to be a champion in that. We're delighted to support you in any way we can. So please, we're here to support you, and please use us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sir Geoffrey. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Sarah. Ambassador Moushira, Lubna, Dina, the godmother of this initiative.
Thank you.
And Nadia, Biba, for hosting us. Time to roll up our sleeves and get to work for the implementation of this very important initiative, and we look forward to its success, inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. Have a good afternoon.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy
Yes.
Easter and
Happy
Ramadan.
Easter, yes.
And Ramadan, yes.
Ramadan, yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.